year since I last drove the Peugeot 308 GTI, and to be honest, I've missed it. It is fantastic. Now before I go any further, what I want to do first is just explain something to you, and that something is the weather. Today we thought, right, we've got a 308 GTI, let's come to Wales. It's fantastic scenery, beautiful roads, it will look excellent. And then we came here and it has been horrendous weather for the entire day. This is the first time we've actually had decent weather, and it's when we were inside, not when we're outside and we're freezing cold. So I apologise if there's mist or rain, but sometimes you just can't plan for the weather. This is the new 308 GTI, or rather it's the facelifted 308 GTI, and it benefits from all of the little upgrades that the standard 308 has just had in its midlife facelift. So you've got slightly improved tech, a few more safety features, a tweaked design on the outside and a tweaked interior too. However, it remains mechanically identical. It's got exactly the same engine, it's got the same brakes, the same suspension, the same gearbox, same steering, etc, etc. One of the key differences between this GTI and the old GTI is that you've got less choice. Before you used to be able to get a 250 and a 270, and that stood for horsepower. But beyond just the horsepower, there were some other really quite big differences. To upgrade from 250 to 270, you'd need to spend about £1,600. And as well as the extra power, you'd also get better seats, bigger, lighter wheels, a limited slip differential, and huge, huge brakes. Now though, there is no 250 model. It comes as the 270 spec, which completely makes sense really. You'd have to be quite foolish not to have gone for the 270 above the 250, because yes, it's £1,600 and £1,600 is some money, but the equipment you got and the change in the character of the car far outweighs that price. So to now just offer the 270, I think it's because most people probably realise that that was such a good deal. And you really could feel the difference between the two cars, not just on the track where it was very noticeable, but also on the road. You could really feel the difference. Now this engine, as I said, completely identical to the engine in the pre-facelift model. So 270 brake horsepower, 243 foot-pounds of torque. And unlike a lot of its competitors, it makes do with a 1.6 litre turbocharged engine. Most other hot hatchbacks nowadays use 2 litres or more. That in itself is a massive, massive achievement. That's about 168 brake horsepower per litre. And to give that some sort of context, the Ford Focus RS has 150 brake horsepower per litre. The new FK8 Honda Civic Type R, that has 158 brake horsepower per litre. And the legendary F40, Ferrari F40, has 162 brake horsepower per litre. Now granted, that is a much older car, but still, what an achievement. 0 to 62 takes exactly 6 seconds, and the top speed is 155 miles an hour. Now granted, that is a tiny bit slower than some of its competitors, but it's still pretty impressive. And from the outside, it makes all sorts of funny pops and bangs and all sorts of just strange noises. It's just a shame really that actually on the inside, I can't really hear much of that. Although, I can change the sound of the engine. Not actually change the real sound of the engine, but I can make it sound different in the cabin by pressing the sport button down here. Let me do that. What it does is it makes the steering slightly heavier, sharpens up the throttle response, all the dials have gone red, and it pumps synthesized engine noise into the cabin. The standard 308 does that as well, but not to the same extent. In this, it's much louder and it's a very different noise. So if I just change it down to third and accelerate, you'll hear what I mean. I'm not sure yet whether that's just a gimmick and it's something I actually like, but it's kind of fun. The brakes, as I alluded to at the beginning, are huge. They come from a company called Alcon, and they're 380mm ventilated discs at the front and 268 solid discs at the back. They're huge and they stop you so quickly, it's actually slightly alarming the rate at which this can decelerate. They are really, really impressive. You also get a Torsen limited slip differential, and it makes a huge difference to the way this car drives. I remember with the old model, with the 250 and the 270, when you're driving the 250, it really struggled to get its power down, not just in the wet, but also in the dry. It would just start to spin its power away. But the diff solves that. It just pulls you, tugs you out of corners in a way that you can't really get your head around. It is really impressive. Gearbox is a 6-speed manual. It's very light, but very slick and really nice to use. And the steering, it's electric, and it's quite light, but it's heavier than in the standard 308. And as I said, you can give it a bit of extra weight by pressing the sport button down there, but it's light but precise. And then there's the design. The 308 GTI is so much more subtle than some of its competitors, and some people won't like that, others will. I think I quite like it being that little bit more subtle camp. Now granted, this particular 308 GTI perhaps isn't the most subtle because it has a coupe franche. It's finished in 2 colours. So yes, it draws perhaps a few more stares than a normal standard single colour 308 GTI would draw. But the design is really lovely. It's simple and purposeful without being ridiculously aggressive like some of its other competitors. There's nothing wrong with aggression, but sometimes just being subtle and a bit of a sleeper, it's actually kind of fun. On the inside, it's similarly simple. Everything is controlled through the central screen up here on the dashboard, and it just makes the cabin feel a little cleaner. Granted, it's a little bit difficult to press those buttons, seeing as they're not actual physical buttons, so you can aim for one thing and press something completely different, which is annoying. I like this car a lot. It's a different proposition to something like a Focus RS or a Civic Type R. It's less, look at me, it's less in your face, it's less, and I quite like that. It still gets on with the job of going fast really well. And it's cheaper too. It's about £28,590, which, yes, is still a considerable amount of money, but it's less than some other cars in the same class. Yeah, I like this car. I like this car a lot. And I like Wales. I just don't like the weather, because we have now finished filming for the day and the rain has stopped. The weather has a sense of humour, obviously. Thank you, weather. Thank you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have quite a long drive home, so I'm going to pop it in sport mode and get going.